Hello, my name is James Oakes, and I'm a LexisNexis practice area consultant. My role in the large law firms is to make sure that new associates, summer associates, and even long practicing attorneys and partners have knowledge of what's going on Lexis and some instruction on how to use it, but most importantly, a point of contact. So let me start there. This is me. I am again a practice area consultant with LexisNexis. I've been doing this job for about 12 years. Most of that time has been spent working in the law schools. But recently we've combined the role of law school representative and large law trainer into one. I'm based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and as I said, I've been doing this for 12 years, and during that time I've trained thousands of people. So I'd like to believe, and I hope you trust, that you're in good hands. I kind of know what's going on, and I'm usually able to help you or direct you to someone who can if you ask me a question that I don't know how to answer. I will be adding my contact information to the end of this presentation to make sure that you've got it, but I want to make sure that you at least have a kind of a face in mind of who you're dealing with. A little bit of background about me. I, right out of high school, joined the military. I spent 4 years in the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne Division. I was an infantryman, so my job was basically to jump out of planes and carry heavy stuff. I did that, this is way back in the 1990s, so immediately following that, I went to undergraduate at IU, and then I went to law school at the University of North Carolina. And after law school, I practiced very briefly at a firm that specialized in two things: personal injury law, which was not where I focused, and federal civil defense, which is where I focused. I represented something like 400 people in North Carolina in suits where DirecTV was suing them for allegedly stealing satellite television. So that's kind of how I got my start in the law. I realized about halfway through law school that I wasn't all that interested in practicing as an attorney. There's nothing wrong with practicing as an attorney. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I pursued a different avenue, which eventually brought me to Lexis. And so, again, for the last 12 years, I've been basically teaching people how to use Lexis, and that's where I plan to stay. Our agenda today is fairly simple. I want to accomplish several things in this session. First and foremost, I want to make sure you know how to get help on Lexis during your time here at the firm. And again, I'm going to finish with that, despite it being my first concern. Second, I want to make sure that you're aware of the breadth and depth of the resources you have access to on Lexis. And then third, I'm going to make sure you're aware of some changes taking place over the summer, some of which have already happened. Finally, I'm going to share a couple of helpful tips with you. My plan is to do all of those things by going over a bit about the product and what's available to you, talking to you about limitations on your access, when it's proper to use your firm ID, when it's proper to use your law school ID, etc. Reviewing a few tools you may not be familiar with, and then showing you 2 or 3 of my favorite advanced tips that I think will help you out this summer. Finally, I'll close with a short explanation of the help options available to you. The end result is that you'll be better prepared to conduct your work on Lexis this summer and know where to turn for help while you're here. So what's on Lexis Advance? I know that in law school the focus tends to be on cases, statutes, and selected secondary sources like ALR and AMJUR, as well as, but to a lesser extent, law reviews and journals. But the materials needed for the actual practice of law are so much better, and this is where Lexis wins. I'm going to go over just a couple of points on this slide. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it all to you, but you're welcome to look through it on your own. The main point I want to make about your access on Lexis right now is that you have access to what is now the largest federal case law collection in the United States, second only to the Library of Congress. So we currently, because of our recent acquisition of Ravel Law and the materials that added, we have 25% more federal case law than any of our competitors. So if you're looking for federal case law especially, but really case law in general, you should be coming to Lexis. We also have the largest collection of court dockets, and that can be extremely useful as well. I should mention, it's not on the slide, but when you combine that large collection of case law with the leading citator in Shepard's, there really is no better resource for case law research than LexisNexis. Turning my attention to legal news and public records, we do have the most comprehensive collection of public records with 65 billion plus. This does tend to come up over the summer. Public records research is a surprisingly common request for summer associates. We are also the exclusive providers, aside from their own websites, of New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, and many, many others. And we also, in addition to that, we have 26,000 plus news and business sources, which, I've already mentioned our major federal or major national coverage, but we also have 30% more state and local coverage than any competitors. So if you're looking for legal news or public records, you really should be starting with Lexis Advance. The last thing I'm going to mention on this page again is going back to those secondary sources that I talked about a little bit. ALR and AMJR, you can pretty much put those out of your mind. They're very rarely accessed by law firms. When they are, it's a rare exception. What is generally used in terms of secondary sources are Matthew Bender titles. You may not be familiar with the name Matthew Bender. It's just a publisher. Lexis is the owner and exclusive provider of Matthew Bender titles. It is the single most popular series of secondary sources available in the law, and also the most cited to series of secondary sources available in the law. They're not called Matthew Bender, though. You're never going to see, Matthew Bender on wills and trusts. It doesn't work that way. Matthew Bender is the name of the publisher. What you're going to see is the author's name on something like that. It'll be Chisholm on patents, Nimmer on copyright, Moore's federal practice, etc. So that's what you're looking for. A lot of the titles you'll find on the shelf at the firm are Matthew Bender titles, but you also have access to them via your law school account, which brings me to the next topic of conversation, and that is when and where you can and should use your law school account versus when and where you can and should use your law firm account. First, realize that this is entirely up to the firm. LexisNexis really has no control over which one you should be using. What I can tell you is that the terms and conditions you accepted when you signed up for Lexis say that you are allowed to use LexisNexis, period. There's no limitation, there's no time limit, there is no restriction that you can only use it for academic purposes, which is what our competitors do. So you can use your Lexis account at the firm, your law school account at the firm, without getting in trouble on the Lexis side. Now, some firms do require that you use the law firm account when you're doing work for clients. And the information I have at this point is not necessarily as reliable as the information that you're going to be able to get from your firm in terms of what they would rather you do. So I really don't want to get into too much about whether you should or should not use your law school account. What I can tell you is that there's no reason on the Lexis side that you shouldn't, and that almost every firm I have ever dealt with has said very clearly that if you are educating yourself, you're trying to remind yourself what eminent domain is, for example, there's no harm with using your law school account. Some of them, where the difference comes in, some of them will then require that once you've re-educated yourself and you're actually doing work for a specific client, then it's time to jump to the firm side. I don't know what your firm wants you to do, so you need to check with somebody and defer to them. What I can say is generally it's very hard, very difficult to accidentally run up a bill when you're on the firm's account. There's almost always something on the screen that you have to click that makes it very clear you're going to pay for whatever it is you're about to do. So you really want to talk to somebody at the firm about billing practices at the firm. But again, 99% of the time, firms are fine with you using your law school ID to educate yourself about a topic before you begin doing work with a client. Other firms will insist that you use the law firm ID throughout any actual client work, and then still a third group of firms, and probably the majority of firms, will tell you to use your law school ID over the summer. And indeed, that's one of the reasons we gave you access to your law school ID all summer long. So on that note, you should also know that daily research points have been enabled for summer use for your law school ID for the first time ever. So even if the firm doesn't want you to use your law school ID, don't forget to log on every day and just do one quick search on your law school ID to make sure that you're collecting those points over the summer. Okay, let's talk about the kind of a quick review of tools that you may or may not want to employ this summer. And all of these are going to be on your law school account as opposed to your law firm account, because I don't necessarily know what's on your firm ID, but I do know that through your law school account you have access to some things that the firm most likely does not. So I want to make sure that you know how they are used and what to use them for. We're not going to spend any time today going over how to build a search or anything like that. I trust that you know that by now. However, if you don't, please don't be embarrassed. Reach out to me and let me know, because that's definitely not going to be a good thing for you this summer. So you and I will need to work together a little bit to bring you up to speed, and I can do that as confidentially as you'd like. I don't need to report back to any partners or anything like that about how little you know on Lexis. I just don't do that. I want to point out one thing that did change recently, and something that people often don't realize. You can rearrange these little sections down here. So you're able to rearrange these to make sense and organize them however you'd like. Be aware of that. The other thing I want to point out is this custom pages link. This is new. You can now identify favorites that you use on a regular basis, and rather than just storing them down in favorites, you can organize as many of them as you'd like and set them in the custom page, and even set this custom page to be your starting page after you sign in. You can also share your custom pages with other people. So there's a short video linked here that explains how to use this. I do encourage you to check that out because it's a really, really nice feature. Now, in terms of how to access the rest of these tools, almost always the right way to access the tools is going to be up here in what I call the navigation grid. So if I click this, you'll see there's a little breakdown of all the different tools that I have access to here. I also want to point out this More button. I'll mention this again at the end of this presentation, but if I click on the More button, I have the option to get help here, and I explain this in detail at the end, and then also live support is available here. So both of those are right there. All right, back to the tools. Review of tools. The first one I want to show you is Lexis Practice Advisor, which is right here. Lexis Practice Advisor is a wonderful tool designed for transactional attorneys. So you can see there's quite a few different practice centers here and jurisdictions. So we've got, all the jurisdictions essentially in the United States, and then we've got lots of different practice areas. If you are working in one of these areas, this is a great tool for you. And I'll even go a step further. If you're working in one of these areas and you need to produce a final document, so I am working in real estate this summer and I need to produce a commercial lease, right? That's when I'm going to go to this tool. This is Lexis redesigned to function the way that practicing attorneys in these transactional areas of law function. Okay, so what we're going to do here is think about, what do I need to create? What I need to create in this case is a lease. So I would like a form to start with. I want a format that a template, so to speak, that I can copy and turn into something useful. So that's going to be here under Forms. Note, by the way, I skipped through it, but note I could also have just run a search up here. I could type in something like commercial lease, or if there's a particular real estate issue that I want to research, I can do that too, because I would still have access not just to forms, but to cases and statutes and everything else. So all of the primary law that's on Lexis Advance is also on Lexis Practice Advisor. What's different about Lexis Practice Advisor primarily is its organization and its task-based structure. But also there is some content on Lexis Practice Advisor that is unique and exclusive to Lexis Practice Advisor that we've had people create just for Lexis Practice Advisor. And I'm going to give you an example of that now. So let's say, again, I need to create a lease and I'm in California. I'm going to go into California, and then I'm going to narrow further to this Expert Forms function right here. And I'm going to narrow even further to say, okay, commercial leasing. I see office lease agreement, long form California. I'm just going to go ahead and click that. What I get when I use forms, the expert forms at least, on Lexis Advance is a number of good things. The first one I want to point out is that you'll notice there's blanks on this form, and I can stop and click on those and put the name in, Joe Client, okay, and so on, and fill these forms. What that's going to allow me to do is complete this form online and then effectively quick download it into a Word document. So have a mostly completed document. All I would need to deal with at that point is essentially the formatting and putting in, all the other information that my firm might require. The other thing that you get is information about who created this form. So in this case, it's Natasha Chalmers, an attorney at Gordon & Reese LLP. And so if I want information about Ms. Chalmers, or if I want to contact Ms. Chalmers to ask questions about this document, that's something that's within the realm of possibility. Up here is the form summary. It explains to me what this form is for. This one is very brief. Many of them are much more significant in terms of their wording. They give you a lot more information to work with, so be aware of that as well. As I move through, I also want to keep an eye out for these two things. So drafting notes looks like a little yellow page, and alternate clauses looks like a page with a C. What do those do? Well, let me find a drafting note example here. Here's a drafting note. If I click that, this is Natasha Chalmers providing me with notes to Section 2. So why does Attorney Chalmers structure this way? All right, and so that helps me understand the form and why it's structured, and helps me figure out if I want to make changes. Alternate clauses, if I go ahead and click that, I will get a breakdown of the other optional clauses that might be available, and my favorite, I can add those clauses to the form, or I can create my own clause text here and add it. And you'll find that these are relatively evenly spaced throughout all the forms where this functionality is enabled. There are forms on Lexis Practice Advisor that are not fillable in this way. These are really just the exclusive forms provided for Lexis Practice Advisor. You will not find this form on Lexis Advance, but you will find it here. You will also find many other forms that maybe don't have these features built in, and those are available on Lexis Advance. So really what you're getting with Lexis Practice Advisor is more information about the forms that you're filling out and the ability to actually create functional, finalized forms, aside from the fact that it's just organized more efficiently for the way that transactional attorneys function. All right, so that's Lexis Practice Advisor. Moving on. I'm not going to get into this tool and demonstrate it because it would take way too long, but I want to point this out. So you can see this is a law school ID. I'm on the law school homepage. If I go into resources and then I scroll down to the bottom, near the bottom, you're going to see a link for Lexis for Microsoft Office. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Lexis for Microsoft Office is available for Mac and Windows, and it's essentially an integration of Lexis into Word. And what it allows you to do is do your research while you're writing a document. So if I highlight a paragraph of something I've just written, I can use a couple of buttons built into Word once I install this that will look up that text that I've got highlighted, for example. Or if there's citations in my document, I can Shepardize them all with a click of a button. So it's really a great way to integrate Lexis and Word. In fact, it's the only way I know of to integrate Lexis and Word. It is a free download for you, and it's free to use as long as you sign into it with your law school account. And I should also mention it does check Blue Booking for you, as well as several state citation formats. So not just the Blue Book, but if your state has a special format that it wants for citations, then it can often do that as well. And that's something that you set up when you first log in. It's pretty self-explanatory. But again, if you have any questions on how that works, be sure to reach out to me. And remember, make sure to use that one with your law school account only. All right, I'm going to jump back up to the navigation grid and point out something else here. We're also not going to play around in this one today, and that is public records. The reason we're not going to play around in public records is because this is the one place that you can run into trouble with your law school ID. You do have to have a legally permissible use to use the public records. The data that you have access to as a law student in public records is fairly extensive. Voter registrations, practice licensing, real estate purchases in many states. It really depends on what you're looking for and what jurisdiction you're looking for it in, but there's a lot of data here. You do need to have a legally permissible use to use it. It's fairly simple to use. Let me get into just a little bit what a legally permissible use is. If you're researching yourself, that is automatically legally permissible, so you don't need to worry about that. When using public records, I should also mention, unless your firm tells you otherwise, you want to do it on your law school account. You probably have more access to public records than they do anyway. So if you're researching yourself, number one, that's legally permissible. Number two, if you are doing work related to a case and looking up someone involved in that case, that is fine as well. All right, so those are all legally permissible uses. You should not be stalking celebrities or exes or looking up your mom's cousin, that sort of thing. That's not a legally permissible use, so avoid doing anything like that. If you have questions about public records, be sure to reach out to me, and again, my contact information is at the end. Let me mention Lexis Get Print. Lexis Get Print is a phenomenal tool if you need to get a bunch of things at once. So let's say that someone gives you a list of cases or statutes, or they give you, opposing counsel's brief, and you're looking at opposing counsel's brief, and you just want to gather all the materials that opposing counsel cited to. You simply go to Lexis Get Print, and in this box where it says enter your citation, you can type in up to 100 different citations, and my suggestion is you hit enter after each one, but you can also separate them with a colon, or a semicolon rather, so in the same way that you would send an email to multiple people. So you could do something like this. And it works for cases, statutes, and anything else pretty much that you have a citation for. So you can type in as many as 100 documents in that way, or just hit enter after each one. Then you need to choose your delivery option. So you can say, I want to retrieve the document and its Shepard's report, and I want to email to myself. You can also print it to the Lexis printer, though be aware that's going to be at your law school. The Lexis printer is, in this case, going to be in Indianapolis. And that this is your law school ID. At a law firm, you probably won't have the Lexis printer option. All right, so that's Lexis Get Print. Very, very useful tool, big time saver. I will show you one other thing, though, that people don't tend to know exists. So I'm just going to go out to the research page here. If I just have one or two documents I need to type in, I can type those in, separate them with a comma, And you'll see that once I run this search, it will retrieve both of those documents automatically. So it got 123 US 1, it got 545 US 469, and they're available for me. So you don't have to use Get Print if you just have, between 2 and 5 documents to pull up at once. And I should also note here as well, I can add in a statute. And when I add in that statute, my cases are still there, but you'll notice this is a change that happened just recently. So things look a little differently. Instead of having a billion tabs off to the left, you've got one little box up here, and I can see I've got 2 in cases and 1 in statutes. And so I can jump to the other section if I want. And the same thing will happen after I run a search. Okay, so those are some helpful tips there. Let's talk about tools within a case. So let me run a quick search here. I'm just going to search everything for eminent domain. All right, now you'll notice right off the bat I've got a lot of cases, and of course I would need to narrow maybe to only published cases using the reported function, or things that focus on a particular jurisdiction or court. That's going to be relevant for me. And again, I can change to different types of content as well. So I searched everything, which is why I defaulted to cases, because that's where my settings are. That's how my settings are configured at the moment, but I could always jump to these other things. So that's a little change that we did. The other thing is the delivery icons are a little different and a little more functional. It just streamlines things. I wouldn't get too caught up in that. What I wanted to show you about eminent domain is, yes, I have a lot of results, but down here I've got a little bit of color coding coming on. And if you didn't notice this before, this is a graphical representation of how frequently my search term, eminent domain, is appearing in this case. The star here is collecting all the information about any filters that I've applied, as well as any terms that I've applied, and telling me that based on what it knows so far, this paragraph, the highlighted one with the star, is the one that we think is most helpful to you. But you can move to the other paragraphs, and so you can actually assess a large number of cases very, very quickly without even clicking into them now. If you do want to do that, what you would do is, if this case looks interesting, you click it, move on to the next one. Interesting, not interesting, interesting. All right, and then once you've got several selected, tells you how many you've got, I would just save them into a folder on Lexis or print them and make them available to myself. You also have the ability to download or email or save them to Dropbox. All right, I'm going to go ahead and uncheck those because I want to show you something else. This color coding feature is called Search Terms Map, and Search Terms Map gets a lot smarter the more information you give it. So if you tell me you want reported cases only, and you tell me that you are in federal cases, right? I'm going to go ahead and click on More and just go down here and do, we'll do Supreme Court. We'll keep it pretty simple today. All right, it's still pushing Kilo as the first and most important case, but what if I want to hone in, sorry, not attorney. What if I want to hone in on the concept of public use? I'm going to do something a little fancy here, use or purpose. So what I'm saying is I want either the word use or purpose within 3 words of the word public. So I'm going to go ahead and click search on that. Now my color coding has added additional colors. So I've got the kind of, I'm going to call it teal, and I've got a little bit of the more traditional green, and they're broken down. And if I continue to add terms, it's going to continue to add new filters here. That's going to give me, notice it's no longer, the paragraph it's recommending used to be in the summary. Now it's over here. All right, and so I can get into this section that's called Other. It's giving me more information from that document. If I click into this case, I'm going to get some new tools that are also really helpful. First, you'll notice once it gets in here, the color coding is now a lot more detailed. There's a lot more spread and a lot more detail about where my information is appearing. And this is a quick way to navigate through the case as well. I can just click on the different sections and move my way through. Okay. The other thing I want to point out, though, is off to the right. The reason for Shepard signal is a very quick way to say, okay, why is there a yellow symbol attached to this case? What is the case that led to that? So if I click on View Top Citing Reference here, it's going to tell me, according to our editors, this is the paragraph of the case that resulted in a yellow signal on the Kilo case. All right. Realize this is not narrowed to your jurisdiction or the issues that you're most interested in. It's just looking at everything available. What is the #1 case that caused our editors to respond with a yellow signal? Many times, there will be multiple cases that result in a particular symbol. This is just the best one. So it's not a comprehensive Shepardizing. It's just a quick analysis. The other thing that you're going to notice is the breakdown of the different Shepard symbols. That hasn't changed. I'm only pointing you to it because this is about to change. Very shortly, the way this is presented is going to be changed. I think you'll find that the new version is much more intuitive to look at and to understand, but you'll get it. You'll understand what I mean when you see it. The other thing that I really want to point out here is the About This document section. The official case law reporters are available here as PDFs. The other thing you're going to find is that we attach related content, so cases, briefs, court documents, and so forth, or court dockets, and so forth. And then I'm going to talk about these two things, legal issue trail and topic summaries. I'm going to right-click right now and open this link in a new tab because I want you to see this without losing that page. What a topic summary is, when a case focuses on issues that we know people encounter on a regular basis, we will have our editors create a topic summary about those issues. So in this case, Kilo is an eminent domain case. That's why it came up. And it's a case that also focuses on the concept of public use. So if I click on public use and I get the topic summary on public use, what I find is a definition of public use, the seminal cases, the elements of public use, statutes and rules, secondary sources, burden of proof, and standard of review. So if I just want to educate myself about the concept of public use in federal law, then I can do that. The topic summary is going to save me a lot of time. What I love about these is while they are created by our editors, the editors are sure to annotate where they got this answer, and that's a wonderful tool as well. Now, I mentioned in federal law, the default for topic summaries is always U.S. federal, but if you click on View More, you'll see often many other choices. And sometimes your state that you happen to be in will be there, other times it will not. If you're just trying to educate yourself about an issue, most of the time U.S. federal is going to be a good place to start. All right, so let me close that tab, and let's talk about legal issue trail. What if I'm reading this case and I encounter a paragraph and I want to know, this paragraph, the first paragraph of the opinion, where did that idea come from? Did this court cite to another court? It looks like they did. They cited to it here. But also, have other courts ever mentioned Kilo with regard to this paragraph? So that's a question that I need to be able to answer as well. So if I click on this little paragraph, now that I've hit Activate Passages, you can see that the paragraphs that are active have a dotted line around them. If I click on that paragraph, you'll see that I'm able to get essentially a genealogy of this paragraph. So it's a really, really powerful way to say, okay, my case is Kilo, 545 U.S. 469. My case cited the following cases for that issue, and so it gives me that. But then if I scroll down a little more, it tells me all of these cases cited to my case on that same issue. So if I just want to find out what's the origin of a particular legal thought, this is a great way to go about getting that. The reason I don't tend to teach this to my law students during the school year is because this can be very easily confused with Shepards, and they are very different things. Shepards is going to take it a step further, and it's going to say, is this case good law? And then through some filters in Shepards, I'm able to figure out, is this case good law on this point, right? What I can do here has nothing to do with whether the case is good law. It's just where did this idea come from? Okay, so where did this idea within this case originate? And how well respected or how well cited is this case on that idea? It's really easy to use. There is one little hiccup that causes people a little bit of issues sometimes. So I'm going to hit back and just go back one step. From here, if I want to continue to use the case normally, I need to go into About This document and click Deactivate Passages. Then my links will work properly from that point on. Let me just talk briefly about this advanced search button here. I don't want this to scare you. I'm just going to go ahead and click on it. What this will allow me to do is streamline my searches in a great way. So first thing I want to point out here, if you're not familiar with terms and connectors, some schools call it Boolean. If you're not familiar or comfortable with that, we have a guide to the most common ones here and a much more in-depth handout, essentially a PDF of how to use all the different terms, including some you've probably never seen before, that come in handy occasionally. The other parts of this page that I want to point out, though, this is the big one right here. Select a specific content type. So let's say I want to search cases, and I'm going in front of a particular judge, and I want to know everything that that judge has ever written so that I can get a feel for that judge's style and what seems to be persuasive to the judge. I can go into cases. I always choose content type first, and then I'm going to come down. You'll notice these are different sections of a case. So Down even further, I've got the actual opinion of the case. I've got the dissent of the case. I've got the concurrence of the case. And then I've got opinion by, concurrence by, and dissent by. And then written by. Those are the big ones for cases that I love to point out to people. So first, written by means the judge was involved in writing either the opinion, the concurrence, or the dissent, any of those things. If I just want opinions written by that judge, I'm just going to put the judge's name there. Just concurrences, the name there. Just dissents, the name there. And all of those have different strategic needs and benefits. I'm going to today play with opinions. So if I want everything that Justice Scalia, ever wrote, I'm just going to put opinion by Scalia, and then maybe I want to say I want everything Justice Scalia ever wrote about, everything Justice Scalia ever wrote about cheese. All right, and I doubt there will be any, but let's give it a shot. What this is going to do is search every opinion of every court on Lexis for anything where Justice Scalia wrote the opinion and used the word cheese. And much to my surprise, there actually is one case from the Supreme Court where Justice Scalia wrote the opinion and the word cheese appeared at some point. That was the first of 3 tips I'm going to show you on using advanced search. To that search I did for eminent domain. And this time, instead of just saying public use within 3 of purpose, I'm going to say I want cases that focus in on those concepts. So the assumption I'm making here is cases that focus on public use or purpose are going to use the term public use or the term public purpose at least 5 times. And the way I'm going to do that is at least 5, all one word with no spaces, and then I'm going to open a parenthetical. All right, so I start with a parenthetical, and in this case, I'm going to do it a little different. Instead of using Boolean, I could use Boolean, but I'm not going to. Instead of using Boolean, I'm going to do public use or public purpose. And then I'm going to close the parenthetical. All right, I could just as easily have taken that same search that I did before and just done public within 3 of use or purpose. I'm just choosing not to, just to demonstrate the flexibility of the search. So now I'm just going to click search. What I'm going for is, we happen to know it's 92,000 cases. That got me down to 9,600 cases, roughly. And then if I narrow that even further and go down to U.S. Supreme Court like I did before, I'm going from what was 1,000 results when we ran the search before down to 200 that probably focus more on this public use or public purpose concept. All right, and so that is a really powerful tool. What's great about this is I don't have to use the number 5. Any number that makes sense there can be employed. So I could go 3, I could go 75, whatever makes the most sense. The caution I will apply to you is that you do want to be fairly conservative with this. Some judges are like poets. Every word matters and they don't repeat themselves. Other judges can go on for days about a subject they could have answered in 1 sentence. And so you have to play it a little conservative. The best way to go is to keep that number low. So I'm usually telling people in the 5 or 10 mark is probably the best way to go. The last thing I want to cover is Lexis Answers. And Lexis Answers is a machine learning and artificial intelligence powered answer tool. So I can ask Lexis questions. I can, for example, ask what are the elements of. We'll go with breach of contract. And I could continue to type in many other questions as well, but breach of contract is the one I'm going to start with. Elements of breach of contract. So what this is going to do is, of course, run this search for me. And that's great. I'm still going to get my normal results, but we're also going to provide you with an answer. And so you can click more, and we'll tell you these are the elements of breach of contract according to this case. And if you don't like that one, you can use another one. And so you can kind of move through. So you can ask things like, what are the elements of, what are the statute of limitations for, and so on. You can also ask it to define certain words. So you can use this as a quick place to go. The new thing that we just added is the ability to ask about judges. So I can ask Lexis to show me who is Judge Michael James Harry of the Virginia Western District Court. And so I can type that in or just let it suggest it as it did. And I'm going to get an answer card about James Michael Harry Jr. And so it gives me some information about him. And then if I have access to Lex Machina, that's going to give me a lot more analytics about what types of cases he handles and a lot more information. But often you'll find that there's good information to be had about the judge that you find yourself in front of. All right, let's close and talk about help. Let me close by discussing help options. These are not listed here in the order that I want you to go to them. They're listed here in the order of how often they're available. So as you can see, 1-800-45-LEXIS is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as is the online help guide. The online help guide, of course, is just a searchable help guide. You're going to go up to the upper right of Lexis and click on the More button, and one of the options there will be Help. Click on Help, and you're able to get to the information. The Help button on Lexis is contextually aware. And what I mean by that is it knows what page you're on when you click it, and it will automatically point you to help for the items on that page. However, every page of help has a search tab on it, or a search area on it. So no matter what page you're on, when you click help, you can search for help on anything. So please don't feel that you have to navigate to the thing you're curious about before you click on help. You really don't need to do that. The live support chat is also available. The button is right next to the help button when you click the drop down button on more. It is Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to midnight. You can also reach out to me. I'm available Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I do want to be your first point of contact. If it's the business, if it's during business hours, Monday to Friday, by all means, reach out to me. That's my job. Unlike the restrictions that we kind of have on us in law schools, there's no reason I can't help you directly with whatever question you have. In law schools, we have to be very careful of not handing you the answer to a homework assignment. I don't have that restriction when you're working in a law firm. So you can tell me as much as you want about the question. I would remind you that you probably need to be, you need to hold client details close to the vest. But in terms of asking me how to do research on certain issues, you're welcome to ask those questions. Which way is best to reach me? That really depends, like so many things in the law. The phone number that's listed here is the phone number for the phone that you probably just heard make a little noise a minute ago. It's the phone that's with me almost all the time. The only time I don't answer it is if I'm currently driving my car or teaching a class. The email address that's available here is my email, obviously. Do make sure that you note there is a middle initial here, james.d.oaks. It's very common that people try to send me a message and leave that out. Those messages will eventually get to me, but they go through another person at Lexis who is not me. His name is Jimmy, but his email is james.oaks. So he will eventually forward the messages to me, but it's, it takes a little bit longer that way. Which one you want to use depends on how fast you want an answer. If you want an answer right away, you can call or text that phone number, and I will generally get to you during business hours. With email over the summer, it's still fairly quick, but if your summer program, your internship, your summer associateship runs into August, do be aware that my schedule picks up drastically beginning with the first week of August. So things do tend to get a little crazy for me about then as the new 1Ls come into the system, and I have to, handle orientations and plan for their IDs and all that kind of thing. I sincerely hope you found this session helpful. It's been my pleasure to be able to present this information to you, and if I can be of any assistance to you whatsoever over the summer with any sort of academic questions or firm questions or whatever questions might come up, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.